Is Weezer's Blue album a timeless classic or a classic stuck in time? And how did the band's song Buddy Holly become the new age version of the Rickroll? We will answer these questions as well as the history of the album on this episode of Retro Review, focused on the debut release by these Californian rockers. The origins of Weezer can be tracked back to the late 80s with River Kumo's first band Thabnd, which changed their name to Zoom before splitting up. It was around about this time that Rivers met Patrick Wilson, who he would also start a new band with called Fuzz until 1991, when various members of what would become Weezer became the group 60 Wrong Sausages. And wow, what a name to start with. If their roots were in Australia, they might be giants. After a few months, the band would of course dissolve. In order to prepare for the recording session, Weezer would also practice barbershop quartet style songs, which helped with their style of music, and before long they had rehearsed 15 songs before setting out to record in the Electric Lady studio. The band were almost considering to self-produce their album, but were pressured by Geffen Records to choose a producer, and in the end they decided to choose Rick Ossack, who of course was previously in the Cars, and he would assist them for this record. Rick's introduction to the band as a producer was a massive contribution, because he recommended that the band go from the bridge pickups to the neck pickups for a brighter sound, and it certainly helped, of course, that he polished the sound for this album. During the recordings for this record, original guitarist Jason Cropper found out that his girlfriend was pregnant, and while initially brushing the notion off and saying he was alright, by all accounts they would say otherwise. There were times when he would record his guitar parts, and then 20 minutes later he would be on top of the roof of the building screaming his lungs out. It seems something had triggered Jason, and Rivers decided to put his foot down and fire him from the band. He would be replaced by Brian Bell, who still is in the band to this day. Jason has even stated in an interview in 2014 that Rivers had made the right decision, and remarking that it felt weird to be this generation's Syd Barrett or Pete Best. The two, however, remain to be friends to this day, with Jason even attending Rivers' wedding in 2006. Rivers would ultimately re-record Jason's guitar parts in the album in the end, and, at least according to Rick, he did this in one take. I feel like out of all of the three singles, this is the most underwhelming. But given this song was written to be an ode to the Velvet Underground, then the main minimalistic opening riff makes a lot more sense. Also, how did I only notice just now that the song is about going insane? Maybe this tune was one I just never really paid much mind to on playthroughs, and considering Buddy Holly comes before this track and overshadows this tune, then maybe I'm not entirely surprised. Undone or Sweater Song was the first song Rivers wrote under the Weezer banner, and so he chose it to be their first single as a symbolic thing, I suppose. Apparently there was also a pressing issue for the single when it was sent to radio stations to be played, which cut the guitar solo short, but this wasn't a major issue as most had a copy of the album and played it from its source anyway. I guess this shows how much love everyone had for this record, I guess, if the DJs are still buying this one and playing it from their own collection. But that means that there are rare versions of the single out there, and you know what that means.
Money!
In case you weren't aware, Buddy Holly was who am I kidding? You have access to Google. You can read about his biography after this video. All you need to know is that he was an influential rock star in the 50s who died in a plane crash along with Richie Valens and the Big Bopper, and of course their pilot in a day that would be known as the day music died. Or perhaps you might know this accident from The Simpsons.
Hello, Scratchy.
The Big Bopper? Richie Valens? Buddy Holly? No!
The original demo for this song was actually a slower and more fuzz-driven affair, almost akin to, I guess, shoegaze territory like the Smashing Pumpkins, and which can be heard on the Rivers Cuomo solo album Alone, the home recordings of Rivers Cuomo. An interesting fact about this song is that it was released on the 7th of September in 1994, which would have been Buddy Holly's 58th birthday, and it was almost cut from the album entirely because Rivers really didn't feel confident with this tune. It was only at the behest of producer Rick Ossack leaving little pieces of paper around the studio with "We Want Buddy Holly" written on them that the song stayed on the record, and in hindsight, this was a massive impact for the band. The song would be a massive hit, of course, and even got them a gold record later in 2006 when downloading music became a more legal process, and they accumulated over 500,000 downloads for this song alone, and became one of Rivers' favourite songs to perform live. It would even see another spike in popularity the years after its release when the video clip was included on a Fun Stuff CD for Windows 95, which was a big deal for the time as music on computers was still scarce, and I'm guessing an entire music video would have just been a pipe dream for the future, considering only the year earlier Pink Floyd had to use the internet for the time to help promote their record. Well, as discussed on another episode of Retro Reviews on the Division Bell, to see an entire music video only a year later, that must have been mind-blowing for the time. But then again, the Rolling Stones changed all this with Voodoo Lounge, but that's a story for another time. As for the video itself, it was directed by Spike Jonze, who did the music videos for R.E.M., Sonic Youth and Daft Punk. He was also the director on Being John Malkovich and was an executive producer for the Jackass series. See, there's his name. Weezer would also lend one of their songs to Jackass 3 for the song Memories, which was used in the end credits as well. But for the Buddy Holly clip, he would have the band perform the song at Arnold's Drive-In, like it was a segment for Happy Days, and dressed in attire for the time period. The band were even introduced by Al before getting into the song, and it does well to provide as a backdrop to the stereotypical dance scenes of that era, except with the big crunchy riffs being played by Weezer. Sure, they ham it up in the performance, but they had to in order to sell the part. It's a cool video and certainly was iconic. As someone pointed out, they like to come back to this video every Valentine's Day to remind themselves of how they are still a virgin. In fact, most of the comment section is similar to this, with people saying that they got an ad for autism testing after watching this video, and there are about 40 other comments of this is still one of the insert band's names here best performances. Now, I don't get this joke or this reference. Can someone genuinely help me out here? No, that is not how you're going to help. I'm never going to find out, am I? Now, I definitely couldn't give you an answer as to why, but it seems that TikTok has gotten a hold of this song and used it for various shorts.
Alright, so whatever album it lands on, I'm going to try to play a riff from that album.
I swear to... on my fucking mother.
I'm at Home Depot right now.
No! 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 No!
The only conclusion I could say is it seems to be Zoomer humor. Quick cuts of dumb shit to the guitar tone that seems to be too quirky for even the 90s, but a perfect fit for the TikTok generation, who have the spatial attention of a goldfish on meth. And I don't care if that seems offensive, because this video is too long for them, and most of them wouldn't be bothered to watch up to this part. But hell, if you're part of that generation and you've made it this far, kudos, you're very different. There may be one video in YouTube's long-lost history that explains why there is this fascination with Weezer. And, well, here is the original clip.
Oh, it's just Weezer. Weezer? Oh my god, it's Weezer!
When I heard that this song was being used as a meme, I thought perhaps it would be trying to recreate the video clip or something to that degree. But instead, I was met with throwaway clips that made me just feel let down.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
Maybe I'm just old and will never get it, but then again, who am I to complain? After all, I was brought up on Family Guy and Robot Chicken, which seems to be the creative force that caused this whole style of humour. Either way, for better or for worse, this seems to be the new Rick Rolled, but it hasn't quite got the longevity for a good old. I suppose another and more positive way to look at things is that this may have introduced Weezer's Blue album to a younger generation, and I like to think this outcome is the desired one, and I hope that many people have come across to this album because of TikTok. So what was the reason for choosing Buddy Holly as the titular figure for this song? Well, it boiled down to the rhythm of the tune. Originally, the lyrics referenced Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire before being changed to Buddy Holly and Mary Tyler Moore. So, you know. Now, every Weezer fan knows the backstory behind this one, and for those who don't, well, the song is about alcohol and the damage it does to families. Rivers wrote this song a while ago before, well, the Blue Album, but had no lyrics for it yet, until he remembered an incident when he was young, and he found a beer in the fridge that belonged to his stepdad, which triggered a fear that he might leave like his father before due to his alcoholism. But the story of Rivers' dad, Frank, is really intriguing. From the song's lyrics, we can hear Rivers giving his perspective about his dad's new lifestyle and finding Jesus, and it certainly seems like he holds a grudge against his old man. But the story goes a little bit deeper than that. Frank did find Jesus during his lifetime. In fact, he would end up becoming a preacher for the Church of Pentecostals, and you can see some of his sermons on YouTube, which he usually streams, and he does play as a drummer as well on some of these streams.
Thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. My God, my God.
In fact, all the way back to the 60s, he used to be a practicing Buddhist, and on top of this, was a drummer for the jazz band Weather Report before they released their debut album. He even would play with Wayne Shorter on his album Odyssey of Iska. It is noted that Frank missed the birth of his son to watch the World Cup, but I am unsure about the validity of this statement, as no soccer matches were being played between the 11th of June until the 14th of June, and the World Cup was in Mexico, so time difference shouldn't be held into account. I guess there is some merit to his claim, of course, as it is rumoured that Rivers was named after 3 major soccer players in the World Cup: Rivellino, Luigi Riva, and Gianna Rivera. Sorry if I butchered those names.
Open wide for some soccer!
Whatever the reason was, he was not there and would drink in excess until eventually getting a divorce. This happened when Rivers was 4 and his older brother... No, wait, this can't be right. His older brother's name is Leaves? Damn, that is some major foreshadowing right there. Well, anyway, he left them at a young age, but would come back every so often to come and see how they were going. And yes, if you were curious, they did fix their relationship before the Blue Album. In fact, Frank even joined Weezer on stage in 2013, and as of writing this, he is still very much alive. I think it goes without saying that this is a very profound and deep song for Rivers, and is of course an amazing tune to boot. Does this album have deep cuts? Shit, yeah it does. The whole freaking album is essentially made up of deep cuts. Right from the start, we are greeted by My Name is Jonas, which is an amazing song to kick this record into gear, and its iconic intro has been credited to Jason. Followed by No One Else. Although this song could be perceived as a bit creepy, as it is about being a bit overzealous and being a borderline protective boyfriend who doesn't want his girlfriend to go out, if he's not around of course. I guess this was the precursor to their follow-up Sophomore album. Aside from this, the next tune, The World Has Turned and Left Me Here, is another amazing song. I think that it has to be said that the second half of the album is certainly a bit lackluster compared to the first half, but In the Garage is entertaining in an endearing song about being a weeaboo, or shut-in as it would have been known back then. The lyrics certainly talk about their favourite rock group Kiss and all the figurines of the band. The protagonist sings his songs and plays Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, we know who this song is talking about. We get it. Still a very solid tune. The last song I want to mention is Only in Dreams, a slow-paced 8-minute song that is the first Weezer song I learned on bass, and it's a very easy bass line to play, but the simplicity of its part is the reason why the song works so well. It acts as a solid structure that just keeps the song together as Rivers plays out his guitar parts, switching from acoustic to electric and back and forth again. It's just this solid jam that flows so well, and I love this tune. It's an amazing song to just get lost to. When it comes to debut albums that would come to define a band, Weezer stand high on that list. It is often said that bands get a lifetime to record their debut album and then pressured to tour, along with record a new album that is impossible to turn out anything just as good. This may certainly be the case here, but I believe other factors were at play, as always when it comes to these phenomenal albums. And as I've said many times before in other episodes of Retro Reviews, timing is always a key factor. There is a small amount of luck that goes into releasing any of these albums that becomes a big hit, and the Blue Album is a perfect example. It was released at the height of the Smashing Pumpkins album Siamese Dream, and a few months earlier, Weezer's guitar tones were perfectly matched to, satiate the needs of the listeners. Of course, it can't be understated that Rivers Cuomo is an extremely talented songwriter, and like Neil Young, he seems to be writing music non-stop, especially at this point of his career. The music that Weezer offered still fit the scene for the time, with guitar riffs in minor keys and lyrics based on deep personal experiences. However, at the same time, their music was pivoting away from this grunge era at a point when grunge music itself was collapsing. So songs like Say It Ain't So felt familiar with these inner circles, while other tunes like Buddy Holly were pushing the scene into new directions. This, coupled with the 41-minute runtime, effectively made a streamlined album perfectly suited for the time. A solid album from start to finish. This album has amazing review scores, and they are as follows. AllMusic gave it a perfect 5 out of 5, Blender gave it a 4 out of 5, Chicago Sun-Times gave it a 3.5 out of 4, Entertainment Weekly gave it a B, which was actually upgraded to A+ in 2014, NME gave it a 7 out of 10, Pitchfork gave it a perfect score of 10 out of 10, Q gave a score of 4 out of 5, Rolling Stones gave a score of 4 out of 5, and Spin gave a score of A. Over at Rachel Music, the album sits with a score of 3.81 out of 5 from over 40,000 reviews, which is quite a high score considering the number of people who have given it that grade. As for me, I would give this album a score of 13.5 million chilies on the spicy scale, with my favourite tracks being My Name is Jonas, No One Else, Buddy Holly, Say It Ain't So, and Only in Dreams. In conclusion, the band unknowingly wrote an album that sealed their own fate. The music found on the Blue Album is of its era, and while it still certainly holds up in a modern setting, it does firmly feel rooted in that mid-90s sound. Of course, many will point to Weezer as a band that have never released anything as good as their debut album, and I've certainly mentioned this a few times throughout the episode. But it doesn't mean that any music that they released after was terrible. In fact, many of the fans would be quick to point out their Sophomore album, Pinkerton, which is certainly an extremely competent record worthy of high praises, along with various other ones such as the Green Album or Red Album. However, the bar had already been set extremely high, so despite hitting the stratosphere with these impressive efforts, it was always dragged back down to earth with their debut album. Perhaps one of the first issues relates to the lyrics changing between their first and second albums, particularly on Too Tired, and Beavis and Butthead would cover this on an episode of their show.
And look at this guy! Who does he think he is?
For once, I'm not gonna say settle down, Beavis. You're absolutely right.
I hate him! I hate him, Butthead! Shut up!
That's right, Beavis.
Shut up!
Another aspect is certainly to do with the songwriting itself, where the quality has certainly dipped over the last few years. Maybe it has to do with the quantity of music being offered rather than the quality. I mean, when you think about it, as of recording this, the band have 15 studio albums, 2 compilation records, 1 video album, 9 extended plays, 37 singles, and 40 music videos. And this doesn't cover any solo material released by the band members or other side projects or unreleased material, which of course would drastically increase these numbers. I believe this was highlighted perfectly by their last efforts found on Seasons and their 4 EPs, which I covered in depth, by the way, on another episode. But at the end of the day, the band does also suffer from a fair bit of gatekeeping within their community, as diehard Weezer fans scrutinize anyone who isn't otherwise. In regards to this, diehard fans, I certainly applaud your dedication towards the band and being highly passionate about something that you love. But know this, everyone can have an opinion and voice it, even if you don't agree with it. Ultimately though, the ones who seem to hate Weezer the most are Weezer fans themselves, so this weird degree of self-loathing bleeds through on anything else made by them in the future. One thing is certain, and that is we still have the Blue Album, and that is really all that matters at the end of the day, especially regarding this episode of Retro Reviews. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content, because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.
Fuck you. Fuck you. I saw it. Fuck you. Fuck you.